All right, so what are we calling this? Is this a podcast, a video? I don't even know what it's called.
I don't either.
We're calling it a podcast. But today we're basically just going to talk about our 2018 season. It's just now wrapping up, and we figured while it was fresh in our minds that we would hop on here and make a video, and got some notes jotted down of some hunts that didn't really make it onto YouTube, but we got some good footage, and it just kind of never made it into anything, into the video or anything like that. So figured we would just talk about some hunts, show some video clips over top of what we're talking about, and maybe some of our strategy and stuff like that. But so basically we started out early September, right? I mean, you did the urban hunt.
My urban hunt started September 9th, which was, let's see, you were in Wyoming.
I was getting ready to go to Wyoming.
Yeah. When I started hunting and got to go on the urban hunt, you had to kill 2 does before you were allowed to kill a buck. And lo and behold, the very first morning, I had a shooter buck run directly underneath my tree stand, come exactly where I wanted him to. And I was set up completely and totally to observe this big brushy field. I had no real intent of shooting a deer unless I just got lucky, and I wasn't allowed to shoot that buck. I didn't have any does, but that tree ended up being a really good tree to me, and I killed 3 does out of it. I never had another buck close to me, but I did have some good sightings from that tree, and it kind of helped me decide what trees I actually needed to be hunting. And that was kind of the cool thing there. I was hunting with another guy who hunted with a climber, and he was watching me every day move around to different spots and was sitting in his same tree because there were no other trees he could get in. And he was getting aggravated because I just every day was popping a doe somewhere. So he was, by the end of the season, asking me all about saddles and asking me what he should get, and of course asking me if I can get him one for cheap. But we might have bred a new saddle hunter there, just watching me bounce around from tree to tree.
That's a good point too you bring up, because if you're hunting a small property like that, if you hammer the same tree over and over and over, these deer figure you out so fast.
Yeah, especially in urban hunts.
Yeah.
I mean, they do that everywhere. Those urban hunts are condensed. This is an 11-acre parcel.
Yeah, so it's really
11 acres, and it's open. So from one end to the other, the deer can see you. You got to be careful with everything. And I would see other people, as soon as I saw someone else hunting it, or I thought someone else was hunting it, you could tell how they were accessing, and it just, stuff made no sense the way they were doing it. And I think that's really what helped me the most, is being strategic and trying not to overhunt it, but bouncing around when I was, so the deer never knew exactly where I was at.
Yeah, so talk about that buck you killed down there. You ended up moving and kind of figuring out where he was bedded at.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. That was actually what I would consider my first beast kill. I had, from the same tree where I killed all those does, I had gone and watched this buck that I killed the day before running does, and a bigger buck than him, probably, I don't know, you've seen the video, 115, 120 inch buck.
Yeah, that's about right.
He was in there, and of course when I saw him, I was texting Jared, and I said, I just saw a 140. After I watched the video, you can subtract several inches off of that.
Yeah, that happens to me a lot.
But I saw that deer, and all these deer that day were going behind this giant brush pile. So I got out my binoculars and was staring, looking for a tree over there. So I ended up finding the right tree, and when I went over and was looking around, they were torn up with rubs, and I found one bed over there, and it would only have worked on a southwest wind. So the next day, lo and behold, southwest wind, and I thought, if these bucks are going to be in here and they are going to lay down, they're going to do it on this wind, and it was a pretty strong wind. So I moved in the next morning, got in pretty early, and I think about 7:30, this buck came in downwind from me, and that was the only problem. I only had one tree I could hunt. I would have rather been probably 25 yards closer to his bed. But he came in back behind me. Probably the coolest saddle shot that I had this year, because I shot him at 6 o'clock from me,
So
sitting down with
nice.
the tether over my shoulder. And I had to do that because there was a big limb right in my way. So it was actually probably the most difficult shot I had this year. And that deer was dead within 75 yards probably. So it was pretty cool. And he was a good buck. Where is he? Yeah, he's a 7-pointer. Not a monster. Might not kill him on my farm, but for an urban hunt, they talked about passing up deer in the meeting, and they said, you better not be passing up anything.
Yeah, it's an urban hunt trying to reduce the population. You're not managing for trophy bucks.
Yeah, I was pretty tickled. Now, that place does have some really nice bucks, and, I don't want to give away too many tips to guys who are going to go do that urban hunt, but, man, saddle hunting in that spot, I don't think there were more than just a couple people that hunted it all season, because they couldn't find a tree to get in. And for me, getting in a tree was pretty daggone easy.
Yeah, it definitely worked out. And you ended up killing, 4 deer down there?
4 deer down there, yeah.
On 11 acres, so
yeah,
it's pretty daggone good.
And, I killed two in one day down there. And then the other 2, one of them was a real small little doe, but they all ate real good. And I'm kind of excited for that next year, because I learned so much about how the deer use that and how much they take advantage of wind, no matter where you are, whether it's urban or in the middle of 10,000 acres.
Yeah,
the wind is the most important thing, and if you're not playing it, you're losing.
Yeah, a lot of people think that they're urban deer. They're used to they're used to people, but they still are very aware of their surroundings. They're still they know the people that are in the apartment, across that wood lot. They know that smell. They know that those people are no danger. But they you start going in there and creeping around to different spots. I mean, they know. They're not stupid.
It's funny. There's a running trail directly through that property, and I've watched deer stand at 50 yards from that running trail and watch people running. And if I was in spandex and a headband and had a way to tote my bow around, I could probably do a little bit better. They don't pay attention to those guys, but man, I tell you, you step foot off that running trail and those deer are gone.
So next time, just wear your spandex and just try to shoot them as you're running by.
Yeah, I'll practice that this summer, the running bow shot, see what I can do.
But yeah, while Grant was, getting started in the urban hunt, which is a lot earlier than what our season opens up here in West Virginia. We don't open up until end of September. So I was getting ready to go to Wyoming, and I had put pretty much all my effort over the summer into this Wyoming trip, because it took 8 years to get the tag. So I wanted to make sure that I was prepared for that, and trained. I started training basically a year and a half before I even went out there. But I still tried to run cameras and stuff around here like I normally do, and but my focus just wasn't on that this past summer. I was just trying to get ready for that trip, and we went out there September 12th. This was something completely different for me. I've never hunted out west. I've never driven that far. It was almost a 27-hour drive, so I was kind of nervous about that drive out there. I didn't know, how that would be. I'd never done something like that, but it was actually a lot of fun, and it wasn't any big deal at all. So it was me and 2 buddies from work.
Not me. Yeah. I wasn't one of the buddies that ever got invited.
We actually started planning this trip before I even met Grant, and I wish he could have gone. But
what's going on?
Here, come here. You can give
it's
your
Big Dougie. Well, he can talk about the camper getting stolen.
Yeah, he can. Yeah. So my dad just showed up, and I didn't know he was coming, but he can take my spot.
And do what?
Well, you said you were going to give your
it sucked.
Your season.
I'm eating tag sandwich.
You're eating a tag sandwich, but tell them about our meth head problem in Ohio.
It is bad. It is really bad. We go out there. Before Jared went to Wyoming, did a weekend work trip. Had the camper all set up for hunting season. Jared gets back from Wyoming. We get a call. Our camper is gone. So we go over there, and sure enough, it's definitely gone.
Yeah, it was gone.
So, I mean, it is bad. I mean, we found out who did it, and the cops won't do anything. So I guess we're on our own.
Yeah, it's a shame. The Podunk Police Department down there basically wouldn't do anything. I called and called back 2 days later, and they're like, "Oh, honey, that officer's on a 2-week vacation." I thought, well, there goes our camper. There's not a chance now. But it's a shame. That camper had been in some rough places over the years. It had been in Nicholas County, West Virginia, and 2 different spots in Meigs County, Ohio, right beside the road, and never got messed with. It just so happens that the right meth maker found it, and now it is gone.
So we reverted to a cargo camper.
Yeah.
We took an old cargo trailer, and we just outfitted it really quick to get us by.
And it works really well.
Yeah,
I like it better than our camper. Jared's the same way.
And, we're going to come up and we're going to buy a new trailer and set it up the way we want it to. If we want to go hunting anywhere, we can go.
Yeah, that'll be nice. I'm excited for that.
The bad thing about Ohio right now is we have to set up alongside the road, and it is bad.
Yeah.
I mean, you sit there, you lay there at night with guns around you.
Yeah. This year, I had the generator running. I was, let's see, that was probably after Thanksgiving or right, maybe right.
Gun season.
Their shotgun season. And I was over there. Doug was out hunting, and I had come in and I think I had to make a call for work or something.
It was pouring rain down.
It was raining. That's when all my camera gear got ruined this year.
We never hunt Ohio when it doesn't rain.
So I was in getting dried out and had the generator running. We have a little Honda generator. And I hear a car pull up, and they back into the spot. And as soon as I hear the car door open, I flung the trailer door open, and they jump back in and take off as fast as they can. They were trying to get our generator. So it's rough over there. There's needles laying all over the ground. Somebody had left a can of chicken noodle soup, a Pop-Tart, and some thong, and an empty box of condoms laying on the ground. So somebody had a good time in Ohio, but it unfortunately wasn't us. Yeah, so it's a little rough over there. We got to do some stuff this year to make that a good spot.
We're not going to let them run us out of there.
Yeah, if Mr. Meth Head, who's sitting in our camper right now, is watching this, we're going to get your ass, I promise, at some point.
We're hot on the trail. Believe me.
So, anyway, your season in Ohio, how did that go?
I seen deer. I had a really giant underneath of me. I couldn't get a shot. But it was awesome to sit, Yeah. Yeah, that's what's kind of cool. Just being able to... I don't get excited. I'd love to kill a big one.
You don't...
But...
Overlay some footage of Doug after he killed Bob and tell me he didn't get excited.
But you know what I'm saying. If I'm going over to hunt, I want to kill a big one, and I'm not going to shoot just any little dink. You know.
Unlike me and Jared, who will shoot dinks every chance we get.
It doesn't bother me if I don't get one. I thoroughly enjoy going over with you guys and
it's fun just to do it. The deer camp experience is.
And. I eat a tag sandwich every year. I'm getting used to the taste.
Mm-hmm. A little salt and pepper.
Which I'm glad you got over that this year, buddy.
I did. I finally did.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. All right, so where was that? Wyoming. So 27-hour drive. Drove all the way across the United States. Drove all the way through. Didn't stop. There was 3 of us, so we took turns driving. And we got out there September 12th, about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And this was just a spot that I picked on the map, just cyber scouting. It just looked like it was one of those spots that may be overlooked. So I was kind of nervous, actually, once we got there, because, you never know what the pressure is going to be like, if there's going to be a ton of people or whatever. So we start heading out this dirt road, and there's nobody around. It's like a ghost town. I'm like, man, we might actually luck out here and not hit any pressure. So we get to the trailhead, and there was 4 trucks there. So I was a little discouraged by that, but you know, it's huge country, so wasn't too worried about it. So we, our plan was to camp at the trailhead that night to kind of acclimate to the higher elevation. And we were so friggin' excited that we had our stuff packed up, and we were hiking up the mountain, you know, within an hour of getting there. So we got a little ways and found a nice flat spot to camp, and decided we better take it easy and pitch the tent and everything before it got dark. So we did that and got to hear some elk bugling and elk rubs all over the place. So that was freaking awesome.
That's probably my favorite part about being out west is when you hear elk bugle, and especially at night. Like almost every night we were in Colorado, the elk just tore it up at night, disappeared during the day. You couldn't find them at all. But that was probably my favorite part about being out west.
Yeah, I mean, I'd never even heard an elk bugle before, and it's like as soon as you hear it, you know, you just get that tingle down your spine, almost like hearing a turkey gobble for the first time of the year. But we had to hike about a mile to find water that evening, and we had to go up an elevation and kind of drop into this creek drainage, and there was elk sign everywhere. And we ended up spotting 2 big mule deer does and a couple fawns on our way up, so we at least knew that there was deer, you know, in the area. But camped that night, got up the next morning, hiked all the way to the top, which is another about 1,000 feet elevation gain. And if you've never been out west, I can tell you right now that elevation is going to kick your freaking ass, because I mean, you just can't catch your breath. And
it's a weird feeling.
Yeah, it's like you've ran a mile, but you haven't really done anything. So that took some getting used to. I mean, physical conditioning, you know, the legs and everything felt great, but just the thin air was rough. So get all the way to the top, and had a spot marked on the map to camp. So kind of stopped there, dumped off all our gear, and then our plan was to head up through a low gap out onto a ridge to a water hole that I'd marked on the aerial map. And I was just praying that there was water in this hole, because it's just super dry up in the high country. So we hike out there, and there is definitely water, but it's muddy as can be. It looks like chocolate milk, and you can tell that the elk have been wallowing in it. So I tried to filter some with my filter, and it wasn't working. So we really didn't know what to do. So plan was just to hike back to camp, get tent and everything set up, and then try to figure out the water situation. So Jeremy, my one buddy that was with us, he was kind of the water Nazi on this trip. He was constantly worried about water, and me and Josh were wanting to glass for deer, and he's wanting to look for water. So we head back out this same ridge with plans to go to that water hole and try to filter some of it. And we kind of there's a bench way up high on this ridge that kind of hides you from the other side, you know, so the deer don't see you going across that ridge. So we decided to go up and kind of hide as we work our way along this ridge. And we come to this rocky chute that's up on top, and I look up there with my binoculars, and there's a freaking giant buck standing there. So we just got here. I've never seen a mule deer buck in my life, and the first buck I see is a 175-inch 4x4. So we kind of freak out a little bit, and we're all trying to get our spotters out, and you get a look at it. And as we're watching this buck, I can't remember if it was Josh or Jeremy, but they looked down on the side of this mountain. I mean, it's really steep, straight up and down. And there's an elk track in the side of this hill, and it's got water in it. We're like, that's kind of weird. So I go down to this elk track and kind of start digging it out with my hand, and I'll show you a clip of it overlaid with what I'm talking about. But it was like a seep in the side of this mountain. It would just fill in with water. And so we dug out this hole, maybe a foot wide, foot deep, and we were able to pump all of our water right out of that, and it was good, clean water too. So first afternoon we found a buck, and we found water, which is super important. So that was that a buck? Who ended up going after that? Or did anybody go after that buck the next morning, or how did that work? That was the buck that Jeremy went after. Okay. So if you haven't watched the video that I posted, watch the video on this hunt, and you'll get to see this buck. I mean, just a big, mature 4x4, a trophy for anybody, really, but for never hunting mule deer, never been out there, it was pretty awesome to see that. Right where I had marked on the map to check out is right where this buck was at, so that was pretty cool.
Did you all discuss beforehand your system for figuring out who gets to go after what deer? Like, because and I'm not knocking these guys Jared went with it, I'm a lot cooler than both of them, so I should have probably been on the trip. However, they went, if I spotted a buck, I would have probably held up that was my deer to go after.
Yeah, I guess that'd be fair. We really.
What was your method of deciding? So was he bigger than you and could have beat you up and taken your lunch money?
I don't think so. We really didn't talk about it, and it was kind of. I guess it wasn't awkward, but it was kind.
I could see where it could be awkward.
You could tell that everybody was thinking about like who's going to go after this buck.
Yeah.
So I was definitely thinking about it, but the cool thing was we left that spot, went to another spot closer to camp, and we spotted another buck that was just as big. So
target-rich environment always helps.
Yeah, so there's 2 bucks to go after, and there's 3 of us. So we went to bed that night, and we still didn't talk about who was going to get to go after this bigger buck. So we wake up the next morning, and we're like, all right, we got to figure out who's going after this buck. So, like, what's the fairest way to do it? We're just going to draw straws or sticks.
Yeah.
Whoever gets a short stick goes after the buck, which is totally fine with me. I didn't care at all as long as somebody got a chance at him. So we drew sticks. Josh drew the short stick to go after the buck. Jeremy decided to go with him so they could kind of work together and spot for each other and all that. And I was kind of excited because I got to go off by myself, which I'm kind of a loner anyway when it comes to hunting. So I got to, kind of make my own calls and do my own thing. And ended up working out. Spotted a buck right at daylight. A buck that we didn't see the night before. He was a different one. He was a 3x4. Still had velvet hanging off. Double throat patch. He's a pretty sweet looking buck. And he was at like 400 and some yards. And, I've had that gun dialed in out to 1,000. But the wind was just ripping down that canyon that morning. And
you can tell in the video.
Yeah, it was pretty wicked. And I didn't want to shoot that far. So I was like, well, he's kind of a borderline buck anyway. So I'm just going to see if I can put a stalk on him and see how close I can get. And if I could get pretty close, I'm going to kill him because it'd be pretty cool experience. But I just started working my way down through that timber. And that country will fool you because it looks like it's all kind of flat. Not flat, but there's not like little dips and valleys. And once you actually get down in it, I mean, there could be 25 deer in there and you're not going to see them because there's little holes and, dirt mounds and stuff like that. But I snuck down in there. I ended up getting in the same patch of timber that those deer were in. There was 3 bucks, 3 that I know of that I saw. And I got close to them and I lost them. I couldn't see them anymore. So I was kind of standing there. I didn't know what to do. And then I see them working their way out this hillside. And I thought that they were going to walk into this opening kind of right in front of me. So I had the camera set up just waiting and they disappeared. And I knew that they were in that little patch of trees. So I was like, well, I'm just going to start walking up. And I made a mistake here. I laid like half my gear down on the side of this hill. Just all I needed was my gun and the tripod with the camera on it. So start working my way down, and I figure I'm within 60 yards of them, and I haven't seen them bust out. So I was like, hey, I'm just going to keep pushing forward until they jump out or I shoot them bedded. And I come over this little mound of dirt, and they were bedded right on the back side of it, and they jumped up. And I don't think these deer had been pressured at all. I mean, or maybe mule deer are just stupid, but he ran about 10 yards and stopped broadside. And he actually wasn't even looking at me. He was looking down the other way. So I guess he just didn't really know what happened. And I shot him, and he hit him right through the shoulders, and he just come barreling off the hill right to me and flipped end over end. I wish I could have got it on video because it was pretty awesome.
So you shot up.
Yeah, I was shooting
uphill. Yeah. Even in the video, to me, I felt like I was picturing in my head that you were above them shooting down on them.
No,
that's interesting.
Yeah, I was actually below them, and the way the wind was blowing down the canyon. So by staying below them, below their level, they couldn't catch my wind, even though it was blowing kind of toward them, but it was going below them. So I just stayed low and circled around them to the backside, and within 2 hours I had my buck down. So pretty awesome start. And then it's a weird feeling whenever you're 4.5, 5 miles from the truck, and then you shoot something like that, and then the feeling of crap, I've got a lot of work to do to get this thing back, kind of hits you. But I sent a message to the guys and told them I got a buck, and they come down, and we got it all quartered out and loaded into the packs and all that. And since Josh had gone after the buck that morning, which they did see, by the way, they got within 300 yards of him and didn't get a shot at him. But Josh helped me pack my deer out, took it back to the trailhead, which we kind of went down over a straight up and down hillside, probably 800 feet elevation straight down. And I trained to do that stuff, but when you've got 80 pounds on your back, loose rocks under your feet, it was pretty sketchy, to say the least. But we made it back to the truck, had some blisters on my feet. It was pretty rough, but took it to the processor. On our way back to the trailhead, we get a message from Jeremy that he had shot another buck. So me and Josh had to hike 4.5 miles back to camp, and then another 2 miles out to where Jeremy was at with this other buck. So we got up there, I'm thinking it was like 9:30 at night, and he had about half the deer cut up. So it turned out to be the big one that we had seen. And funny thing is, they watched that buck go over that ridge, and Jeremy went back to hopefully catch him coming back over for the evening, what he had done the same, the night before. And the buck actually come from the bottom of the other side, which was weird. We didn't know if he circled all the way around the mountain, but I guess something spooked him, and he come running up out of the bottom, and Jeremy shot him at 120 yards or something like that, and dropped him. And Jeremy didn't even know what buck it was. He didn't know it was the big one. He just knew it was a good one. But we got out there and helped him, and we got that buck back to camp about 1 a.m. So, I'd been running on about 2 hours of sleep in 48 hours, I think. So I was pretty much freaking toast.
It's hard to sleep on those trips anyway.
Yeah.
You're so excited to get out and see all the new stuff, and so you don't sleep anyway, and then packing out. I've never packed out deer like that, but I can imagine it put a hurting on you.
Yeah, it was definitely. I don't know how many miles I walked that day. I'm thinking I walked close to 20 miles in one day. It was awesome though. I wouldn't change a thing about it. It was the way the whole thing worked out was pretty freaking sweet. But we packed his buck out the next day while Josh hunted, and then on our way back to the trailhead, you just need to watch the video. This is when the whole forest fire thing happened, and it was pretty scary, to be honest, because we really didn't know where the fire was, how close it was. And as we started hiking back up to try to find Josh, he met us. He had ran all the way off the mountain 4 miles, and he was almost back to the truck, and he was freaking out. And I guess there's ash raining down on him when he was out hunting, just super thick smoke. And so all of our gear was sitting, 2,000 feet above us. So they wanted to just stay at the trailhead and not go back. And I was kind of trying to, be the voice of reason to maybe try to go back and get our gear. We had guns, tents, sleeping bags, everything was up there. So you got thousands of dollars worth of stuff. And obviously that's not worth your life, but just looking at where the fire or where the smoke was coming from, I thought that we had some time. So I finally convinced them to go back, and I've never been so tired in all my life. When we got to the last little section to get up to camp, super steep. I was having to literally push my leg with my hands just to be able to go. It was awful.
So did that end up being the right decision as far as from what ended up happening with the fire? Did it end up burning all that up?
So the fire made it to where Jeremy shot his deer, which was a mile and a half, 2 miles from camp. It never did make it to where our camp was, luckily, but it was close. Yeah. It did take it a couple days to get there, but it was so dry out there that we were afraid, like embers falling down. Yeah. I mean, it could just set off another.
Spreads like crazy.
Yeah. Huh. So, I mean, we packed off the hill. Luckily, got all of our gear, and there wasn't a mandatory evacuation at that point. We talked to the Forest Service, but the next day it was like a mandatory evacuation, and you had to get out. So we wouldn't have been able to get our gear if we waited till the next day. So we definitely made the right call there. From there, basically a couple days of trying to find another spot. We kept running into other people. I actually kind of made friends with a guy on the rock slide forum, and I got a hold of him. He had been mule deer hunting in another area of the same unit, and he kind of told me where to go and check out this spot for a couple bucks. And we went there. We drove like 2 hours to get there. There was people camped everywhere all out-of-state guys. Talked to several of them, and they weren't really seeing anything. So we sat one evening, saw a couple does, and just decided to move the next morning just to try to hike way back in and find some more deer. And the third spot ended up being pretty freaking awesome. We hiked in another 4 miles, I would guess, way up into these basins. Just an absolutely gorgeous spot. We glassed that high country up in there for a full day, and we did see one buck, but he was like 1,500 yards away, and something spooked him, so he couldn't put a plan together on him. And then saw some does and several elk, and you could just tell that the deer had all been run out of that country up there. Some guys on horses had been hunting it. So it was getting down toward the end of the week, we were running out of time, so we decided to kind of drop down, try to find some lower elevation, and hopefully see if the bucks had been pushed down. And we dropped maybe 800 feet and spotted a freaking giant buck. And he actually wasn't that far below where we had been camped at. And we sat all day trying to hopefully get a shot at him, and he never did come back out, but we saw 2 more bucks that were pretty nice. So at that point, we were out of fuel, we were out of food. So we were 3.25 miles from the truck. So we just decided we were going to hike back to the truck, camp there, and then the next morning we'd hike back in, which would be our last day to hunt. So we hiked out, couldn't find a spot to camp because there was cattle grazing like all through that area where the trailhead was at. So there was cow crap everywhere. So there was no place to put the tent. We've got a floorless shelter, so you don't want to put your sleeping pad down on cow crap. So we ended up sleeping in the truck, which was I thought it was pretty nice. Of course, Josh, he drew the back seat so he could lay down in the back seat. So me and Jeremy both hated him anyway. So I slept in the passenger seat, and I was pretty comfortable. But Jeremy was in the driver's seat with his seat laid back, and Josh's head was right behind him. So Josh was snoring all night, and Jeremy was pissed. We got up the next morning, and Jeremy was not in a good mood. He was hating Josh. So that was pretty funny. But we got up at like 4 a.m. It was 18 degrees, freezing cold. And we had to hike in 3.25 miles back to this spot. So, we kind of had all of our layers on because it was freaking cold. We start hiking, and then we're sweating. So we're all stripping down, and I'm down just to my base layer. So we hike back in there fast as we could go. We actually kind of repositioned to get a better look at this hillside. And right at daylight, it was just light enough to see, I spotted a deer, and it ended up being a really nice buck. I didn't get any video of him because I was trying to spot through my spotter, and Josh was trying to get set up for a shot. But he was a 3x3, and he had a cool little crab claw on the end of his main beam. He was a big mature buck, but he was 675 yards And, we're all pretty practiced out to that range or farther, but when you're shooting straight up a mountain, it's really difficult. So Josh was having a hard time getting his gun set up, and the deer was just standing there broadside. So we had a little bit of time to get set up, and he had his scope dialed in, all that, and I was watching through the spotting scope, and he shot, and I watched the bullet go just right over that buck's back. Dead perfect left to right, just a foot high. So deer runs off, and that was it for that trip. It was our last day, so we
now, was he the one that was snoring all night, or the one listening to the snoring all night?
He was the one snoring.
Okay, that's better. Being the one that got kept up all night and then missing a giant buck would be pretty tough. Whenever I camp with Jared's dad, I have to talk myself out of murder all night long because he snores so daggone loud and keeps me awake. And there's been several times where I've almost got up and killed him. Talked myself out of a life prison sentence. That's crazy. That trip sounds so awesome. The whole time Jared was out there, he was texting us and sending us messages and stuff. And me and LG Shea were, of course, armchair quarterbacking the whole time. Like, he ought to do this, he ought to do that. Both of us having no daggone experience out there, but it was awesome while he was out there just to get updates all the time and, seeing pictures and listening to all the cool stuff he was doing while we were back here. I was hunting. LG wasn't hunting. But, it was pretty cool to hear it and see the story. And that video is probably one of my favorite YouTube videos on our channel. It's just cool to watch. And
it's a 20-minute long video, so it's a little bit longer. But I've got hours worth of footage from this trip and just kind of put the best stuff in there. But yeah, it was definitely a challenge trying to film the whole thing. The other guys probably got kind of annoyed with me because I was constantly in their face with a camera and, hey, do that again so I can video it and all that stuff. But
I would have loved, if I'd have had time off work, I'd have gone in a second with no tags or anything and just gone out and filmed. I think that would have been so cool.
Just being in that country and camping and, it was, I say it in the video that the kill is the smallest part, and I'm 100%. I'm not lying about that at all. I killed a great buck. That's what I went out there to do. But, just going out there and being able to hunt that and, see all the different animals, the antelope, the mule deer, elk. We did see a moose. It was just super awesome. And, if you're thinking about going out west and doing a trip like that, just do it. It's intimidating. The country's intimidating. But, I guarantee you're more capable than what you realize. So just, get out there while you still can and do it, because it's, it's public land. It takes a little bit of planning, a little bit of money, but I promise you can do it. But that wrapped up my Wyoming trip, and then basically come back to West Virginia to chase some whitetail, which, I had cameras and stuff out all summer, but I did not have anything on camera. And I don't think you really had anything on camera either.
I didn't. Yeah, it was a weird year because my farm, I didn't hunt my farm this year of 200 acres. And it's like 2 hours away, but with everything going on, I really didn't get to hunt it. I ran cameras out there for 5 weeks, and I had a 4-point and just a massive amount of does. And they just weren't around. I don't know. Usually I'll have 1 or 2 good bucks from anywhere from 100 inches to 120 inches. I didn't get any pictures of them, and after I let those cameras soak for a month and then went and checked them, I just decided I'm not even going to hunt it and just let it kind of chill out. And now my neighbor has recently sent me some pictures of some pretty good bucks that were out there, and he even told me where they were. We kind of try to work together a little bit, and he's a big buck killer and doesn't even hunt that area that much either. So he sent me some pictures of some good bucks he had on camera. So it's one of those things. Up here, I didn't really have anything. I don't even know if I ever had a picture of a buck other than in Ohio over 100 inches this year. I don't think
it was the same way with me. I had all kind of camera issues. It seemed like every time I You know, I put these cameras in pretty strategic places outside of these bedding areas because usually if you get them set up there, you get a pretty good idea of what bucks are using those bedding areas, and that's been my strategy for the last several years, and it works pretty good. Yeah. But you know, it seemed like every time I went to check a camera, there was 2 that I let set for like 2 months, and I didn't get pictures from either one of them. One of them didn't take a single picture, which that was one of my best spots, so that was a huge bummer. And then I found a new spot that I was excited about. I actually jumped a really good buck out of there when I was scouting. So I hung a camera up, let it soak for a long time, and went back. I think you went with me that day to check that camera, and I had it on a DIY camera mount that kind of screws into the tree, so you don't have to use a strap. The camera had fallen and was facing the tree, so I got pretty much no pictures from that.
That's what's rough. You don't want to go into those spots.
Yeah.
Very often, and it seems like it's always those spots. It's always those spots that are hold some good bucks, and then you go in and either your camera you never switched it on, you didn't do something the whole time. That happened to me in Ohio this year. I was real excited to check this camera, and my good buddy Jared had turned it off and taken the SD card out of it. So I got there so excited because I was like, these bucks got to be in here. There were like 5 scrapes in there. And I was like, this is going to be awesome. And then Ding Dong had pulled the card and turned it off for whatever reason. I don't know.
Hey, if you're going to sabotage your buddy, you got to go all out.
So it was interesting. It always happens when you're real excited and there's really good sign around your camera that something's wrong with it.
So, this is, we're getting into early October. I'm trying to find a buck around the house here to hunt because, I can hunt after work. So I got some time during the week to chase these bucks. And this one bedding area, it's a really good spot. I killed a buck out of there season, prior. But I know exactly where they bed at, and I know the exact beds that they use, which is, it's pretty tough to find those spots that they use consistently. But in the early season on a northeast wind, these bucks use this spot. So I hung a cell camera right outside of where this bed is at. It's just on a really heavy exit trail. And I figured if I had that camera there, I would get a picture of a good buck using this spot. So I hung that camera, and it sat there for I don't know how long. Lots of small bucks, never a decent buck. So I'm like, what the heck? This is kind of weird that there's not a good buck in there. And there had been a really good 10-point in there the year before, and I knew that he made it, and I knew that he should be using this spot. I mean, it's the spot that he just liked to use. So my plan was just forget about what that camera is showing, because I've figured out pretty quick that you could have those cameras in a perfect spot and those bucks somehow get around them. I mean, it just happens. So it was October 15th, I believe. I set up kind of an observation sit where I could watch this hillside, and it's in a good spot. It's a really good location to catch them if they drop out of that bed and come down the hill. I mean, you're going to be, right in range of them. But I sat there and I watched this buck get up out of his bed. It's the same deer from the year before. This year he's a really nice 9-pointer, big heavy 9. And I watched him work his way out this hillside, and he was maybe 80 yards from me the whole time. And he eventually made his way out to a right-of-way that had some pretty nice grass in it. I'm thinking there was some clover in there, and that's what he was headed to. But I watched that buck that night, and it was a north wind that day. So wind was in my favor, perfect. I was able to slip out of there, didn't bust anything. So October 16th, I went back in there knowing that buck should be in that bed, and I was going to adjust trees to hopefully catch him doing the same exact thing. And I got set up in a really awesome tree, and that night was incredible. It was probably the best hunt of the whole, one of the best hunts of the whole year. I mean, just deer after deer after deer coming out of that bedding area. A couple big does right underneath of me. I got really good footage of them that I'll show you. And I had a little doe come in behind me, and she bedded down, and it was getting within 20 minutes of dark. She bedded down. I'm watching her, turned around, paying more attention to this deer than I should have been. So I turn around, and here comes this buck coming down that right away. He's 20 yards and closing. He's going to walk right into my shooting lane. So I grab my bow, I grab the camera arm, and I have to swing it between the tree and me because I'm in the saddle facing the tree. And I get the camera over there, and I go to put my bow up on my leg to kind of rest it, and my cam hit a button on my leg. I mean, it just made the slightest, I mean, you could barely hear it. This buck heard that noise, and he stopped. And if you've hunted mature bucks, they just seem to have a sixth sense. He knew something was not right. He didn't see me. I know he didn't smell me. The wind was coming down the hill, and he turned around and he kind of just walked straight away, and he's still in range. I'm at full draw, and he just would not turn, give me that quartering away angle. He just walked straight away from me. So
yeah, that's a nice buck too. He's a good looking deer, especially for around here.
Big body buck, nice, good mass. Probably won't score much over 120, but I mean, just a definite shooter. And after that buck left, I had another nice buck come in right underneath of me. He was a 9-pointer that I've never seen before, and I haven't seen since. And it was too dark to shoot, and I'm thinking he was a 2-year-old buck. I don't think I would have shot him anyway. But that same night, my wife actually shot a buck. She was hunting our back field over our little food plot, and she shot a 5-point. And I got a little bit of footage recovering him. I'll show it to you. But she hit him a little far back, and we gave him a couple hours, but ended up no problem finding him. So that was her first buck with a bow in 3 years, I think. So that was pretty cool for her to get one. But,
yeah.